Telling a story isn't about perfection. It's about communication. It's about our shared moments together. Hi, my name is Jeff Price, and I would like to welcome you to Intentional Musicianship, where we look at everything that goes on at center stage and the preparation behind the scenes needed to transform your performance into an unforgettable experience. I am here to encourage you, support you, and generally have a great time being united together with you through music. After a wonderful performing career as a storytelling musician around the globe, my joy is found empowering musicians to find the freedom to go beyond the music stand and the fourth wall of the concert stage to better engage with their audience members. This podcast isn't a classroom, it's a brainstorming session, and it is meant for musical performers of all ages. Together, we'll explore performance practice, stagecraft, the nuances of storytelling, and the strategies for genuine audience engagement. We're here to discover what truly makes a live performance resonate. I guess every story does have a beginning. And for this first podcast, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself and about why we're here, or at least why I'm here, and maybe initiate this new relationship with you. Now, I'm really thankful that you're listening. And I think this is going to be a grand experiment about all things live music. And I'm really looking forward to see how this develops. But because this is a completely unique experience for me, I have no idea what's going to happen next. I was talking to my instrument repair technician. His name's Mike Hollis. He's up at Volkwine's music store up in Pittsburgh, and he's just amazing. And I was telling him that I was going to go live with this podcast this week, and I said it was just time to do it. And I told him, I just haven't failed in a good long time. So I think it's about time to get out there and start taking some chances. And so as I was thinking about how to present this first episode, I have to say I had nothing. I just couldn't figure out how I might talk to you the first time. I'm a bit apprehensive about all this stuff and these first steps that we're taking together. And so what I thought I'd do is take a whole bunch of questions that people sometimes ask, when you get to know one another, and put them in this podcast. Also, I've had a lot of fun talking to people that are really supportive of this idea for this show. And I thought I'd answer some of the questions that they've said. And then consequently, some of these questions, I'm going to try to really highlight the musical part of it, the live music part. So at the end of the outro, where we have the call to action to come to the website Intentional Musicianship or to reach out to me and start communicating, you'll be able to maybe talk about some of the things that you've also done that is very similar to me. And I hope that maybe some of these ideas or things maybe might encourage you to take whatever next step that you might have. And I want to let you know that in the process of this, I'm game to be reached out to communicate with, because I really, really, really love music. It really is part of who I am. So let's get started. So the first question is something like, well, are you a music teacher? Where'd you train? Where'd you come from? And so I'm going to answer this as succinctly as I can, but I'm really old. So I've done a lot of stuff, and I've gone to a lot of schools. Now, and like a lot of you guys, I grew up and, did all the solo ensemble festivals and was fortunate to be in the West Virginia All-State Band. And then I went to West Virginia University for my bachelor's in music. And then I went to Northwestern University. Then I came back to West Virginia to be a graduate assistant with the bands program to work on a master's of education. But in the middle of that, I earned a position in the Army with the Army Field Band as a special musician. Then later on, I became an Army warrant officer, so I trained to be a band master in the Army at the Army School of Music. I then became certified as an instructor in the Army. And then when I left the Army, I went to a special veterans program at Syracuse, and then I earned a master's certificate in human resource management from Villanova University. Then I went and earned a master's degree in human resource management from Westchester University of Pennsylvania. And so all in all, I was an Army instructor, and I currently teach human resources. And I've been an adjunct faculty member since 2017 at Fairmont State University. And I was fortunate there to teach saxophone, clarinet, and woodwind pedagogy. Okay, now we have question 2. Who have you performed with? Again, I've been playing for a long time. And because of my wonderful colleagues in the Army music program, I got to play with them on a daily basis. And also because of them, and because of the uniform I wore and who I represented within the United States Army, I've been fortunate to play with groups like the Cincinnati Pops and the Boston Pops and the Detroit Symphony. And that's all because of the people I got to play with on a daily basis in the United States Army. Here's question 3. What instruments can you play? Now, as any musician might say, if you pay me, I'll play it. However, if you want to get some real value, you might want to consider me playing something like my primary instrument, which is saxophone or clarinet, or I might conduct, or maybe I'll give you some vocals. I might even play some bagpipes for you. But in the old days, I also used to do flute and guitar and maybe do a little bit of piano. So another question I sometimes get is, I heard you had a hand injury. Do you still play? Well, I did have a hand injury in 2005. I'm a poster child for safety, to understand how to use the right tool for the right job. You see, I used the wrong knife to cut an apple, and the consequence was that I hurt my left hand. Now, the great thing is I can still play saxophone pretty well. Clarinet, a lot more difficult. Flute, I can't play it anymore at all. Guitar, I can't play either. But I've adapted. I learned how to play bagpipes. And of course, I can still sing, and I conducted for many years. And I just had to pivot a little bit, and I learned how to teach and do other things. It's funny, I had that instant pivot moment when I cut my hand, and I said, I might have to change positions. Now, there's a lot of funny stories with that, but that gave me the ability to go to the Army School of Music, and then I went back to the field band after rehabilitation, did multiple tours with them as a saxophonist in the concert band, and all things were good, but I decided to make a change, and then I became a bandmaster in the Army music program. So another question sometimes people might ask me is, have you ever been a soloist anywhere? And how many performances have you done? How long you've been doing it? I'm really old. And I think by a low count, I'm probably in the 2,000 or 3,000 range of performances. And that might be low. And I've been fortunate to play on many great events. I mean, because of who I was affiliated with in the Army, we played for big events all the time. And I played for saxophone conventions, trombone gatherings, flute meetups, clarinet hangs, you name it. I've been fortunate to be a part of it. And we've got to do really cool things like things for American Bandmasters Association or the Midwest Clinic or Texas Bandmasters Conference, all these wonderful state conferences around the country. And even before my hand injury, I was fortunate that I got to record a solo with the Army Field Band on their Legacy CD. It was Greg Pascuzzi's Aria and Allegro, and I'm really thankful for that. So now we can get into some questions about the show and intentional musicianship. So a question might be, is there some sort of educational model or approach that you're using for this show? The interesting thing about this show is that everyone listening has experience performing live on stage. You really don't need me to teach this or teach at you like pedagogy. We're not going from the beginning because you already have a working knowledge of performance because you have your own set of experiences. My hope is that we can cooperatively look at these various topics from different perspectives, and then you can decide what, if anything, that we discussed you might be able to take back with you and place in your toolbox and use. Okay, so let's merge another couple questions together. So the first one is, we have, what do you think when you see all these modern musicians? And then the other one is, why'd you start this show? So I heard this when I was young, but boy, it's true now as I'm old now. The young musicians are doing things I never had to do. They're pressing limits I never thought of. You know, in some ways, I'm proudly say that we were tasked to do more fundamentals. But I'm telling you, some of the teaching and the things people do are just amazing. Now, the reason for this show is it time for another career pivot? Just like I had my hand injury or circumstances change in your life, then, you know, you sometimes have to just move a little bit. And so I've been an adjunct teacher at our local school, Fairmont State, since I retired in 2017. Well, the Board of Governors decided to close that music program. And so for the past couple of years, we've been working on getting those final music students through, and they're amazing. And I think they're really prepared for the marketplace. Now, the great thing is, it looks like they now will keep a music minor at the school. But since I don't have any students to currently teach, I wanted to find a new way to give back to the community within music. And I've been really involved since I retired in that January of 2017 of being involved and being a fan at all these community events. And I've been watching everybody perform. And I saw that maybe I could give back from my experiences in supplementing the training that was already happening for these great musicians because they're so technically ready to just do great things. And I wanted to take my skills as an experienced performer and try to figure out ways that maybe we can look at this live performance and attack it in a different way, that we really want to be deliberate and we want to be focused and we want to be intentional about everything that we do so that we can enhance our relationship with the audience. The next one is about what value this show might provide. Now, I nerd out on a lot of things, especially if it's music related, if it's human resources stuff. I nerd out on Six Sigma. And when I think of value in Six Sigma, I think of changing the essence of something into something that someone would actually purchase. And some of these concepts and things discussed would actually add to that musician's bottom line. So we'd like to take all these brainstormed concepts and add them like spices and ingredients to your music in order to make this really tasty dish worthy of a Michelin rating. Now, it's not enough that we give you the idea. We have to figure out how that you're going to use this spice in the dish. That's going to be the value, is that final dish. And so we want to give you something that you're using on a daily basis. And we want to bundle all these things up for each of you as a listener so that we can provide real value to you. And hopefully you can use this to better engage your listener and your audience member so that you can get a better return on your efforts. And that might come with, more recognition from your performances. It might come with mailing list submissions or improved numbers with fundraisers or ticket sales or merchandise. Now, here's a good question. Do we have a business associated with this? Why, yes, there is a business. It's called Intentional Musicianship LLC. And we're a veteran-owned licensed business in West Virginia. And the main product of this LLC is going to be this podcast and any training resources or consulting that comes about from that. Now, I also wrote the scope of the business so that we'd have quite of other possible offerings depending on the direction of how this business grows. I know I've personally taken what I did privately and placed it within the business. So, for example, when I busk now, I'm using this business license. And so when I actually have to get a permit or I have to show someone that I'm a licensed business to participate in something like a farmer's market or something, I have my LLC with me in my music case to show anybody asking that I'm allowed to do that. So the next question is complementary. What do you expect from this? So when I was thinking about starting this, I really wasn't thinking about doing this thing alone, but I had to start it somewhere. And my hope is that it becomes more collaborative in nature. And as it continues, we have more involvement from each of you as a listener. And hopefully you'll get involved and maybe be a guest on the show, or maybe you'll take over an episode and host a show. And I certainly wouldn't mind that when appropriate, if you've decided that you really like what we're doing, that you might hire us to be a part of your development as a musician. The next question is, what are we going to hear in this program for the near and short term? Well, this program is pretty new, and this is the initial phase. And it is an experiment, but I know it's going to go a long time. But we might have to adapt a little bit. Now, we have the trailer done and we have the first 5 episodes ready for distribution. Now, I did episodes 2 through 5 after the trailer, and now I'm coming back to do this episode 1 because I really wasn't quite sure what to do with this introduction. Now, as I gather some feedback and I'm able to listen through these final products and try to figure out what was successful and how I can improve, I'm going to try to adapt the next few episodes. So episodes 6 through 10. Now, I already have them mapped out, but I'm going to probably have to shift depending on what we've discovered from this. I've already learned so much about this whole process. I think they say it takes around 25 episodes or so to really start feeling comfortable and get a flow for what things are happening. And so then the next phase after that is that we're going to hopefully have live guests. And I hope that these performers are going to talk about how they're intentional with their music making and their approach and their lives as artists and musicians. Now, episodes 2 through 5, I've tried to put in order. Now, this first one was supposed to be talking about your why. And we have that a little bit later on in the questions. And so at the end, when we have the outro and it says, we hope you've learned some things from this. Well, I hope it's just not me talking at the microphone. I hope that in context of this, you're going, yeah, I've done that too. Hey, that might be an idea I've tried. Hey, I was going to try that. I wasn't sure, but now I'm going to try that. So hopefully, even in this monologue part of the show, that maybe you can gain some value. But in episode 2, we're trying to look at what the customer wants, and then we're going to look at storyboarding a show. And then depending on the order, we're going to look at maybe some nonverbal communication like eye contact. And then we're going to look at some music essentials for that performance practice side of things, just as we get started. And that's just how we're going to start. Next question. What has been your biggest challenge as you've done this? Well, for me, the biggest challenge is talking into this silly microphone and doing these basic edits. I don't like working with the sound waves. Maybe I need more screens. Maybe I need a better workspace. My workflow is a little weird in this house. We downsized when I retired. And, in the background, I'm not sure if Eric, who's producing this, is able to get all the crickets out. He can only work with what I give him. And so I can't really get rid of the crickets because I live in a wonderful place called West Virginia, and it's wild and it's wonderful. Another challenge is just trying to figure out all the logistics there are because there's so many technical things with the websites and the business accounts and things you have to work on. And, as you get started, this just takes some time. Okay, the next question is anybody helping you through this? Well, I'm getting a lot of support. I have a great family. My mom was talking to me the other day about this on the phone. My dad just wrote me an email. My mother-in-law just asked about it. My wife and I were just talking about this the other day. I know my sister-in-law just did some things with me. It's just sort of neat how some of this stuff sort of works out. And also, there's this lady named Heidi K. Begay, and she has this podcast called Flute 360, and she's been a wonderful supporter. Now, I know she encourages everybody to have a podcast, but she's been really dynamic in pushing those right buttons to get me to initiate this. And consequently, her husband, Eric, has been awesome. And they have this production company called Red House Productions. And they're helping me get started with this podcast. And I'm really glad to call myself their client. And I look forward to working with them more in the future. There's so many questions and so many ways I can talk to you. This is my best way to do it. But as you can see, I'm pretty talkative. Now, this question is, what are your early memories about live performance? Now, this is a good question just because this is a show about live performance. And now I remember in 4th grade, we were doing a Doobie Brothers song. And man, I tell you, in the 70s, could go wrong with the Doobie Brothers. And there was a song, Listen to the Music. And we did it in all county choir. And the director thought it was a really great idea to add a local rock band. Now, it ended up being a great idea. And also, everyone got to audition to sing one of the verses to be a soloist. Now, I can still sing the verse I auditioned with. Now, the only problem was I didn't get selected. But my twin brother did. And so that was sort of cool. And he stayed with all the vocal things, and I went with all the instrumental stuff. Now, having that live rock band really made a difference in that live performance. It added that sizzle factor. And I remember years later, I got to be that live band for that all county chorus playing the Coasters Yakety Yak. It was a blast. Now, as an audience member, I remember a really cool event. When I was in high school, I was able to take classes at the university with all the other music majors. And that was one of the cool benefits of living in the same town as West Virginia University. And all the college students took me from Morgantown to Huntington as part of our jazz improvisation class to see Wynton Marsalis. And that was the time period he did stuff from his Cherokee album, and it was truly amazing. But during that show, he also did a full Dixieland funeral, and I had never seen or heard anything like that. We just don't have that in West Virginia. And to see the whole thing presented from somber start to celebratory finish impacted me even to this day. It was amazing. Now, we get to the why I chose to be a musician. Now, like everything, I'm trying not to be too long-winded in this episode, but this is going to be the original episode title for this episode. And so, again, in the outro, when it says, if there's anything that has helped you, we're referring to this why question, and maybe it'll help you brainstorm and think about your why. Let me explain with a couple stories. You see, many years ago, maybe around 40, I was in the middle of a flower shop in Grafton, West Virginia. And I was playing saxophone for a bunch of little old ladies as they prepared the day's order for their customers. Way back then, on special occasions in the summer, my Aunt Pam would take me to the local florist shop, and that was run by Nancy Bartlett. And I was able to play some songs and hymns and spiritual songs, things you just learned as a kid and music that just made you feel good. And you could tell by the laughter and the joy and the camaraderie that the atmosphere they had in the flower shop was really something special. I knew when I was playing instantly that my job was to help create this community and help create connection and engage with them. I was a young fella, like I said, maybe around 11 or 12, but I'll always remember how they reacted. They loved everything I did. And this was the moment I remembered because I had this aha moment, and I realized that the music wasn't necessarily about me, but it was for others and how it made them feel. Later on, I remember playing my first professional music job playing background music at McDonald's in Saberton, West Virginia for Valentine's Day. Now, that was a buddy, David Longenbach, from high school. Now, the funny thing is, I didn't even get free French fries for that one. But I remember setting the mood, playing for the people as they came in, and there was something special, even if it was a little bit corny to play at McDonald's, about what I was doing. Live in that musical moment, my job was to entertain and connect with everybody that came in. I realized that that moment, I just might be able to make a living at this. Not because of my excellence, even though I, try to be pretty good. It was because of what I had to give. I was starting to discover my why. And boy, oh boy, through my lifetime of music, I'm sure glad I have music. Now, I don't figure I'm always this altruistic and wonderful, but boy, I remember some of these things very vividly. And I'm letting you know, I think I've always had this heart of service for what music can do for other people. I'm an old fella now, and I love going to shows and supporting musicians. And I understand musicians play for many reasons. But for me, when I play music, it just isn't about the art. It's really about the people. In that manner, it's about the function of music more than the art of music. Now, don't get me wrong. The music as art or function is fluid to me, And I bet there's a lot more points along that fluid line. In one sense, I still like to think of myself as this incredible artist musician with technical precision, emotional loving lines, and this beautiful tone that sounds like the voices of heaven. But, when it really comes down to a 50-50 choice to choose between the art form of music or the people, I always choose the audience. And let me explain what I mean by that. Playing a memorial and giving that family closure gives me great pride. Clanging every high sounding cymbal or loud cymbal, helping every worshiper give praise to God, that's a real blessing. Helping folks celebrate at a wedding, a graduation, or when they're just having fun at a party, that's what gives me great happiness and joy. That's my why. So with my why, I wonder who influenced, someone like me. And I'm telling you who it is. It's my Aunt Pam. She's a fourth grade school teacher at Anna Jarvis in Grafton, West Virginia, and my Uncle Lloyd. He was a lawyer, and they were my biggest musical influences growing up as a kid. I remember going to see my uncle's band set up at the Black and White Bar in Grafton, West Virginia. Now I think it's a credit union. And that was so cool as a kid. Plus, he and my Aunt Pam wrote things like the Grafton My Hometown song and Philippi Covered Bridge song and the Proud of West Virginia song, which was used to teach all the fourth graders about West Virginia and all the counties in West Virginia. And I think that's pretty cool. Other musical influences that I have, I grew up with the West Virginia University Community Music Program, and I had a teacher named Gene Ferrigno. And then I had Craig Shields and Helen Haller. And I had faculty like David Hastings and Curtis Johnson. And I had Tom Powell, David Best, Don Wilcox, John Winkler, William Haller, Virginia Thompson, Joyce Catofano, John Wiegand, Jeannie Friedman, and Cindy Anderson. They were all amazing folks that gave their all for me. And I got to see them all play on a daily basis, in addition to them instructing me all the way from, middle school all the way through college. Now, as a saxophone player, there was this guy in the Navy band. His name was Dale Underwood. And he and that saxophone section were legendary. And I remember Tim Roberts and Cynthia Marr and Connie Frigo, just amazing musicians. And they inspired me. And I remember an earlier version of that Navy band that had Dale Underwood. They came through Morgantown High School where I lived. And when those herald trumpets brought up their instruments at the end of the concert, there were just goosebumps everywhere, and the whole house that was electric. And then there was another guy, Ted Griepentrog. I saw him in the U.S. Army Field Band, and he was a saxophone soloist that played all around the country with the field band routinely. And I got to see them down in Charleston during a West Virginia All-State Band, and he soloed that night. And it was pretty cool because, 6 years later, he hired me and I ended up being in the band with him. And I think that's pretty cool. Okay, now the cool thing for everyone listening is we've made it almost to the end. We're wrapping this thing up. And so one of the final questions is, how do you see your role now? And I just want to say I'm a little older and hopefully I'm a little bit wiser. My left hand doesn't quite work the same anymore. My right hand starting to get sore in the morning when I wake up. My right shoulder is torn and beaten up just because of all those years conducting. But I'm letting you know, I still love music. It still is a part of who I am. And so I see myself as a cheerleader and a helper. I'm really focused on this performance practice, showmanship, stagecraft, musical storytelling, because I know it's all learned. It's deliberate, planned, prearranged, strategic, premeditated, scheduled, calculated, designed, organized, and indeed, it's really intentional. And it's so that you can freely engage with your audience more effectively. And so, as an audience member, my job is just to encourage folks. Now, within this podcast, I'm going to try to brainstorm and possibility think and give you a few ideas to hopefully take to your practice room in the stage to try it out. Again, to see if it fits with what you'd like to do on stage. You're at the end when you see that question that says, is there anything final you want folks to know or anything you'd like to add? So I put a couple things about some favorite composers or things I currently listen to in the music industry. And it's sort of difficult to narrow it down because I'm like all of you. I consume social media. And I had mentioned Callie's Clarinet channel with Callie Laughlin. I mentioned the amazing Heidi K. Begay and her podcast, Flute 360. I enjoy working with Red House Productions with this podcast with her husband, Eric, and Heidi. I really like Kelly Riordan and all the things she's doing for all those great music entrepreneurs. And I tell you what, for current composers, the pandemic gave me an opportunity to just grow as a musician and discover some people I didn't know existed. And there's a real firehouse in England that is just absolutely amazing. And so much so that not only have I bought a lot of her music, that I was part of a consortium on one of her recent pieces. And her name's Jenny Watson. And if you go to JENNI Watson.com, you'll see everything she has. And she's a truly special musician. And then another person is Kristen Denny Chambers. And she currently lives in Boulder, Colorado. And I discovered her from this random YouTube video on unaccompanied clarinet works. And it's been so much fun to get to learn about her work. Now, for both of them, I've done my best to buy a good bit of it. Now, some things I really like to listen to and watch in the music industry, I got two of them for you. I love 10 Thing, and it's an all-female brass band from Norway. This lady named Tyne Thing Helseth is the trumpet player. I think she does all the arrangements. But man, everything's so cleverly done. And then I just recently discovered this lady named Lindsay Sterling. I don't know where I've been, but for someone to be that dynamic with a violin and all the things she does on stage, I'm just wowed. She takes performance to a whole new level. And so that's pretty cool. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for listening and starting this adventure with me. And I really hope that you reach out. Again, special shout out to everyone that has encouraged me, whether it be my students like Skylar Vance or Luke Elam, or all the WVU Saxophone Studio and Jeff Siegfried for all of their encouragement. And I hope to see you on the next episode. That's it for today's episode. We hope that some of the topics and issues addressed today will be useful to you as you move forward in your musical journey. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for joining us today. We know your time is precious, and we really appreciate that you have taken the time to listen to us today. Consequently, we'd like to hear from each and every one of you. You can reach out and connect with us at intentionalmusicianship.com. My hope is that we build a community where we can encourage one another through our mutual experiences performing live music. I look forward to connecting with each of you again on the next episode of Intentional Musicianship.